third leading cause of death is medical error. Yo, what's up everybody? Dr. D. So today we're gonna talk about fatigue. And consider this a lecture for layman's. And even if you are a medical professional, I think you might enjoy this lecture. And this is something I had to learn the hard way. When I started Biohax, our company, I actually started this because I was being diagnosed with depression, and I didn't really have depression. I had something called burnout or adrenal fatigue. Today, we're not only going to talk about adrenal fatigue, we're going to talk about a slew of things that can be leading to fatigue. And what is fatigue? What can it be, a telltale sign? I don't want anybody here to leave this lecture today scared or anything like that. I want you to leave this lecture today with a mindset of, I have a direction in what to do to get rid of this fatigue, or to just even not be so tired and perform at a higher level. Maybe you are a high performer. Maybe you're an NFL athlete, UFC athlete, super mom, taking care of a big family. Whatever it is that you're doing and you want to perform at a higher level, we all are plagued with feeling tired. And how do we get rid of that? And how do we go from tired to feeling energy? Because energy is the essence of life. Energy is the human currency. Without energy, you can't do anything. Feeling tired is a life of scarcity. Feeling energy is a life of abundance, right? And I want us to have also that mindset before we actually go ahead and get into the topic. Let's look at a mindset of energy, abundance, where we have more focus, motivation, better sex life, better life, chasing around your grandchildren or chasing that football or basketball in a game, whatever it is that you want to focus your abundance in this life, you need energy. So let's get into it. So another thing I want you guys to understand, if you were an orchestra, okay, and I want you to understand the systems mindset, right? So an orchestra being a system, or a car, or an airplane, whatever, a system like the human body, right? If you were an orchestra, would you be playing a perfect symphony right now, or not? Would you being the conductor of your own orchestra, what music do you think you'd be playing? I want you to think mindset of a system, right? Because lots of times we already know we're not playing the song that we want to be hearing, right? So, and why does that happen? We live in times that before we used to live maybe in a cave, go hunt some food, go find some berries to pick, whatever, and go back to our cave. It would be very dark, nice and chilly, and we'd have a great night's sleep and then go back and do the same thing. But today, when we go back to our cave, we bring our laptop, we bring our cell phone, we bring the emails, we bring the text messages, we have the yelling kids, and we have all this stuff, and we don't really shut off. And lots of times it leads us to burnout, right? So, but back in the day, when you had to run from a lion, your brain would shut off the front part of the brain, right? So we would shut off the front part of the brain, and we would go and we would turn on the back part of your brain. The back part of your brain isn't very creative. The back part of your brain is the fight or flight. That's the part where you're running from the stressor, right? And lots of times today we have stressors in our life. But it's up to you to really place these stressors in their categories. We have eustress and we have distress, right? Eustress is good for you, right? Eustress is like, hey, I'm getting married. Distress is, oh crap, I'm getting divorced. Eustress is like, hey, I'm taking a big exam tomorrow. I'm taking a licensing exam, and I'm excited about it and so forth. I'm a little stressed about it, but it's eustress, right? If you let it be, or it becomes distress, say when you fail the exam. But you can still fail the exam and learn to see it as eustress, learn to see it as motivation, right? So it's important that we understand that when that lion is chasing us, that we can also kind of manipulate where our mind is going. Are we making it become a distress situation or a eustress situation? Because ultimately you want to keep working with the front of your brain. You want the creativity. You don't want the fear and the anxiety and so forth that comes from the back of your brain. When you turn on the back of your brain, that's where your body also shuts off a lot of your immune system, and your body doesn't care if you're an autoimmune disease is coming your way. It doesn't care if cancer is coming your way. That's not the part that's defending you from that. It's the front part of your brain. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about these things. And here's the thing. Some of you are living a life, you're so worried about being worried, right? And if you could go to a cemetery and ask a lot of people that are there, right, and talk to them and say, hey, how much percent of the things that you worried about actually came true? I doubt they would say a really big number. I'm pretty sure a lot of them would say 90 to 95% of the things that I worried about never actually came to fruition. So this is all, everything I'm saying before we get into the science, is all about mindset. And to really put yourselves, before we get into the science, to really put yourselves in a place where stress is actually good for you. We grow in stress, and stress is something that we should really try to program our minds to go into eustress, not distress. So let's dig in a little deep. So a little deeper. So Dr. Hans Selye, he coined the term stress and published it around the years 1940s, in the 1940s, explaining what stress is, right? And he noticed in his definition, which should be up here on the screen, he doesn't say that stress is actually something that is that maleficent for you. Stress isn't seen as bad back then as we see it now, just because of so many issues that we've been having with stress. But whole point, when we talk about stress, it's really important to understand where it's coming from and how it affects us, right? So, and remember, keep in mind that idea of the lion and the turning on the front of the brain and the back of the brain, right? So, now let's talk about where stress comes from. So we have these glands called the adrenal glands, right? Also called the suprarenal glands. Now we really use the term adrenal gland, right? And as you can see here from the image, the adrenal glands, they're composed of a middle section called the medulla, and then the outside section called the cortex, right? But it's funny because it's actually two glands in one. And their mechanism is very different. The outside of the gland depends on something called the hypothalamus pituitary axis, the HPA axis, okay? And the inside of the gland releases your catecholamines, which are norepinephrine and epinephrine. Another name for this, and you guys will recognize this name a little bit better, is noradrenaline and adrenaline, okay? And you guys know that term, adrenaline. Adrenaline is what gets you going. A lot of medications that are prescribed to us nowadays, or even street medications, turn on adrenaline, and we're very attracted to these adrenalines. These are the things that, like amphetamines and caffeine and all these, they're called methylated xanthines. Caffeine is just the the baby brother of a lot of the amphetamines. Notice how they sound in their endings. So amphetamine, caffeine, pseudoephedrine, phenylephrine, they all have the same terminal endings in their names. So caffeine is a little baby brother of all these accelerating type medications or chemical interventions, and they turn on the center of the adrenal gland, right? And when they do so, you get ramped up, right? And they release adrenaline. That's why it's called adrenal gland. So now you're starting to see how cool this is, but also a double-edged sword. Because if you turn on any engine too hard, it can burn out, right? And this is a tricky engine because, like I told you, it's two glands in one. Because the middle, dependent on the sympathetic and parasympathetic system of your central nervous system. And then the outside, dependent on the hypothalamus pituitary axis, okay, which is also part of the central nervous system. But everything is run on not reality. Your brain does not run on reality. What do you mean, Dr. D? The brain does not run on reality. Your brain runs on your perception. So your perception of life is what your brain is running on. It's not running on the reality. So what is your perception of life? And lots of times you're putting yourself in a very bad chemical scenario because your perception of life is a little off. So is your cup half full or half empty? You know that you've heard that old adage? Well, there's a lot of truth in that, right? So anyhow, understanding what the adrenal gland does and the amount of things that it affects, and I want you guys to take a quick look here on the slide we have on the screen. I mean, there's allergies, things that like caffeine, coffee, fear, psychological stressors, financial pressures, toxins, infections, etc. All these things affect your adrenal glands. Okay, so they're basically regulating your emotional life. Not all of it, but a lot of it, right? Now, outside of the adrenal gland, okay, outside of the adrenal gland, we have a few hormones that play a huge role, and those are hormones, not the catecholamines we just spoke about in the middle. Remember the adrenaline hormones, norepinephrine, epinephrine, or noradrenaline, and adrenaline. Now outside we have the hormones, right? And those hormones play a huge role in our life. So if you look at the screen, you'll see that we have hormones such as testosterone, DHEA, aldosterone, DHEA-S or DHEA sulfate, which is a metabolite of DHEA, and estradiol, estrone. Those are all very important hormones. So those are steroid hormones. Okay, and steroid meaning they're synthesized from cholesterol, that they're made on the outside part of your adrenal gland. Okay, so that's really important because, and there's actually, there's a piece of history that a lot of people don't know. So I don't know if you ever heard of eunuchs, right? Which they used to use back in the Byzantine Empire and Rome and so forth, where they would actually castrate, meaning remove the testicles from servants of the king, etc. So those servants wouldn't sleep with the queens or the concubines or what have you. But they still did so. There's a lot of accounts that was still possible because through your adrenal glands, you still produce about 5 to 10% of your testosterone. So actually not having testicles, these guys were still able to mate and have high power positions in society. So some of those guys are actually doing better than some of our guys today that actually do have their testicles. So that's not good. But, we see also in this day and age, guys in their 23, 21-year-old guys, 18-year-old guys, we've seen it in our medical practice, very fatigued. And when you go see their hormonal levels, they have no hormones. And lots of times they're going to their psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist saying, hey, they have depression, they have this, etc. So a similar scenario that happened to me, but I was 30. And they're feeling very exhausted and just out of place in life, and even psychosocially, they're not fitting in their environment. And why does this happen? Again, because their hormonal level is thrown off. Now, let's go back to our bird's eye view and talk about, just kind of really see everything we've been talking about. So if the center of that adrenal gland's off, right, you're not producing adrenaline and so forth properly, and then the outside of that gland is off, which is producing the hormones and so forth, you really start to have a pretty darn big issue here. So you're having neurotransmitter issue, which is a big issue, right? And you're having hormonal issues, which are another big problem. So as we look into all of this and start to really put it together, that system, remember the orchestra we were talking about in the beginning, or the plane or the car, or whatever system, the company starts to want to fall apart, right? And this is when it starts to affect other things like your immune system. There's a case, for example, the person that says, hey, I've never ever, the patient that comes to us and says, hey, I never had allergies. I'm 44 years old and I think I'm having allergies now. Well, that makes sense because then when you're producing too much cortisol, it starts to affect other systems, right? It starts to affect your body. And what other system would it affect? Remember, it's a system, a big system, and there's micro systems, just like a car, just like a plane. And I'm going to say this a lot because that's the whole point of being holistic, seeing the body as a whole and not compartmentalized, right? Today we have specialties in medicine, and the specialty of the specialty and the specialty. And sometimes I joke around, the guy's so specialized, he specializes in nothing, right? And can't make the connection. And you're talking to a bunch of different professionals that are not talking to each other lots of times. And that's why in the United States, the third leading cause of death is medical error. And you can see there's plenty of links here that we just put up on the screen that will state that for you. So, and again, I'm not trying to do a knock on medicine. I'm advocating for an advent, for a change of mindset, I'm trying to be a Galileo here and to really say, hey, the world's not square, it's round. It's time for us to start looking at medicine as we once did. This is not something new. Before the 1800s, we had this holistic approach, and today we don't. But going back to the topic of today, as we look at these different systems and the cortisol starts to increase and or decrease, because the curve can flatten or the curve can be increased, right? Or you can have different patterns, which we'll talk about in a second. You start to affect other systems, for example, the thymus gland. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm obsessed with the thymus gland. I did not say thyroid, I said thymus gland. Thyroid, thymus gland. When you're born, the thymus gland is huge. There's a classic question they ask us in medical school, and I fell for it. I got it wrong. It's about first year medical school, max second year medical school. You'll probably get this question somewhere in an anatomy exam or physiology, somewhere there. They're going to do they're going to put up a X-ray of a baby, and they're going to put this arrow pointing to this structure, and they're going to say, "What's this structure?" And you're like, "All right, that's easy. That's the heart." And we all get it wrong. It's the thymus gland. Any medical student watching me, if you haven't gotten this question, keep your eyes open. And any doctors watching out there, you guys probably can relate to what I just said. So the thymus gland is very, very big when you're born, and then it starts to involute as you're aging, right? But what does the thymus gland do? It programs T cells. If you want, pause the video, go to Google and hit images and put thymus gland, and you'll see that it's the center, or let's say heart, of your whole lymphatic system, right? You'll see your lymphatic system's connected to that thymus gland, right? Just like your brain is the center of the nervous system and the heart is the center of the circulatory system. Pretty darn interesting if you ask me. And don't take my word for it, hit the image. And then even if you go back in history, there's something called thymus thumping, which a lot of people will talk about how it releases fear, decreases stress, decreases anxiety, etc. You know, when you feel that pain in your chest when something bad happens, like, oh, it's my heart. Yes and no. Why not? Is it your thymus gland? Emotions are very connected to the thymus gland. And now, as we're talking about, the cortisol starts to connect with that thymus gland. Now, if you're in the back of your brain, if you're not in the front of your brain, the creative and beautiful side of your brain, right? If you're in the back of your brain, perhaps maybe if you're having a company issue, you're a big CEO and you're having issues in your business life, personal life, whatever, mom, whatever, marital issues, whatever it is that we all as humans go through, try not to go to the back of your brain where you have to program that. And I am saying this mostly not for you, for me. This is, every day I try to build the man that's right in front of you. So these are things I say to myself. And that's something I really want you guys to keep in perspective too. We're all in this boat together, right? And so once the cortisol starts to wreak havoc and you're in the back of your brain, your immune system shuts off. Your immune system starts to forget about those T cells, programming those T cells. It wants to survive from that lion. Remember the lion we were talking about in the beginning, right? That you would run from, and that was one of your biggest stressors back when you used to live in the cave, 5,000, 6,000 years ago. Well, in this day and age, sometimes the line is an email. Sometimes the line is that argument with your loved one. Sometimes the line is your children. Sometimes the line is a coworker. Whatever it is, we have to learn how to deal with these lines because we can really be wreaking havoc on our system, right? So, and something I want you to understand, cortisol is neurotoxic. Cortisol is neurotoxic. What do you mean, Dr. D? Well, cortisol makes you dumb. No way, I don't believe you. Well, we have another link here on the screen of some research stating how cortisol destroys your dendrites. So what are dendrites? Dendrites are what makes connections between your neurons. And you have roughly 100 billion neurons in your brain. 100 billion neurons. And some neurons make 10,000 different connections, 10,000 different synapses, as we say in brain, in medicine. So and that's what neuroplasticity is. I'm not going to get much into that now, but when your brain develops a certain circuit that as we grow with our families, with our agents of socialization, right, which are families, media, friends, etc., the things that are influencing us, we start to learn how to think in a certain way and make that little racetrack for those neurons. But sometimes that racetrack is programmed in a wrong way. And that neuroplasticity, right, is all done by these dendrites. Now, however, Cortisol destroys these synaptic connections. Cortisol destroys these dendrites. And if you guys have some time, go ahead and read the research on this. And cortisol also destroys another area of your brain called the hippocampus, right? And that's when you start to see people, have other issues in there from other areas of your brain. For example, the pineal gland. The pineal gland is an amazing gland. It releases a amazing hormone that cortisol really interferes with, this hormone called melatonin. I don't know if you guys know, melatonin is an anti-cancer hormone. Melatonin is also dubbed as the hormone of youth. And there's many things that we like to use, and I'll go here on a little tangent. For example, there's peptides that are really amazing, for example, for regulating this. And epitalin is one that comes to mind. I really like this peptide. It's dubbed the Russian wonder peptide, and it really helps bioregulate pretty much almost your whole endocrine system, and does some other amazing things. We'll talk about it at another point. But going back to our line of thought, cortisol will really interrupt your immune system. And just to finish off on the immune system and the thymus gland and the T cells and so forth, if you guys want, look up a trial called the TRIM trial, right? Here, here we have it on the screen. And it's spelled, as you see on the screen, TRIIM, TRIM trial. And that stands for thymus regeneration, immunorestoration, and insulin mitigation. So those three strategies are strategies that have actually been verified that we can reverse our epigenetic age, which is your real age. Because some of us, also because of the cortisol, we end up having accelerated aging. But to reverse that, look at this, to reverse that, and this has been published on Forbes, Nature magazine, it was ultimately published in Aging Cell, which is a very well-respected journal. For us to reverse the aging process, the thymus gland is key. It's actually the first in the acronym. It's the first letter, T, TR, for thymic regeneration. So your thymus gland, remember I said in medical school, we got asked that question, the thymus gland, it's right there next to the heart. But that's when you're a baby. It's nice and big. But as you're aging, it's involuting, getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And I've been in plenty of autopsies, and especially of the more elderly population, you can't find that thymus gland. Good luck finding the thymus gland, right? So there's many things that are affecting, that cortisol is affecting. One of them that, again, I'm very passionate about is the thymus gland. And there's more. There's more that you can do also. Just another little tangent here, just to a topic I'm very fond of is peptides, because they're in your body. They're biological molecules that do wonders. There's something called a thymus therapy, which there's pro-hormones to actually turn back on your thymus gland and get your thymus gland to actually start regenerating. In the study, the TRIM trial, they actually used growth hormone. They used growth hormone, and they used DHEA, which is the hormone we're going to talk about in a second, that fights off the cortisol, right? So there's a good cop, bad cop. Well, the DHEA is the good cop. So they used it as well in the TRIM trial, which is interesting. You see how now they're seeing studies of how do we live longer, and a lot of these studies are actually connected with decreasing a lot of the maleficent hormones, not maleficent, but hormones that if they go too high, they become maleficent in your body. So the studies that we're starting to see that help us to age gracefully and die young as late as possible. Keep that sentence, keep that phrase in your mind. We want to die young as late as possible. These studies are all connected with balancing, that balancing act between these hormones that you don't want them too high, right? And hormones that you want them to be at a certain level. So the thymus gland and the immune system regulation can be heavily disrupted due to the cortisol issue, and can lead you to autoimmune issues, can lead you to cancers and so forth and things like that. And remember, something we like to say here at Biohax, and it's pretty well proven now, that 70% of the health of your future life is dependent on your environment. It's dependent on you. And only 30% is dependent on your genetic makeup. The truth is, we all have really bad things in our genes. We all have code for or most of us, it's safe to say. In medicine, we try really not to use absolutes, but most of us have things cooking in there that are not good, but it's up to you to turn them on or turn them off. That gets into another topic called methylation, where you turn on and turn off certain genes, right? It's kind of like, I like to use the example of the piano and the pianist. Just because you're the pianist doesn't mean you have to play all the keys. The song you're going to play is the song that you're going to play. You choose that song, right? Remember the orchestra example? Is your life playing the song that you want to hear? Big question to ask yourselves, right? So now, DHEA, what the heck is DHEA? Dihydroepiandrosterone, right? That's also a steroidal hormone, so it comes from cholesterol, right? And whoever told you cholesterol is bad, you gotta ask the question, which cholesterol, right? Is it the big fluffy ones or the little ones, right? The little ones, and truthfully, are bad, but the big fluffy ones, those are the ones you want, right? High levels of those. So, and we'll do another lecture on cholesterol later, but the whole point, DHEA is super beneficial for your health. So cortisol starts to go up and DHEA starts to go up. But the problem is sometimes we're pushing ourselves too much and the cortisol can't keep up, right? And that's the problem. The DHEA is the regulator. So your levels of DHEA are super important. It's very, very, very important you understand your levels of DHEA. And just a reminder, in that TRIM trial study that I mentioned, they use DHEA to help mitigate or to help improve those people's lifespan in the study, right? So moving on, I want you to understand, as you see here, the whole endocrine system, the picture on the screen, or part of it, it's all connected, right? So we have the thyroid, the gonads, and the adrenals. It's all connected. Because I'll give you something else. For example, fibromyalgia, right? The 17 trigger points as defined in medicine that you have the symptomology of fibromyalgia, right? But there's other studies showing that fibromyalgia, is it fibromyalgia or is it lack of vitamin D? Is it an unbalanced thyroid, or is it adrenal fatigue, or a constellation and a mix of all of them? So that's something also very important to understand, that lots of times when we categorize these symptoms that when we put them all together, we can actually call it a disease. Is it a disease, or is it, right? And this, again, I'm asking this question to the medical community. Is it a disease, or is it a system that's out of balance, or a few systems that are out of balance that once you balance them again, right, that all of a sudden disappears? Let's not forget, there's about 12,000 documented diseases right now. There's no physician that can remember how to diagnose, treat, etc., and the symptoms of all of them. But the pillar of all diseases are four things. And I know this is a very, very, very aggressive comment, and very bold comment, let's say, but follow along with me and see if you might agree. Inflammation, oxidation, glycation, which is sugar issues leading to all the metabolic problems, etc., and methylation, the process of turning on and not turning on certain genes. And we'll do a separate lecture on those, but that's something that here we humbly defend in our scientific view of what's causing issues in the human body, right? So these organs in your endocrine system, when they start to become more balanced and in tune with each other, and that orchestra starts to play the right song, you don't want the oboe not playing the same thing as the saxophone, not playing the same thing as the cello. When they all start playing and following the conductor, which should be you start to get a life that makes more sense. You start to react better to certain comments. You start to find opportunities to be more resilient, to be more resourceful. Because it's very, very hard just to put things in your head and say, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Some of you are very, very mentally strong, and some of you are working on it. But here's the thing, when your biochemical system is in balance, it makes it a lot easier to get through this life, right? And that's how you were designed to go through this life. Your grand design, if you will, how your creator made you. There's a code inside of you, and a code that we need to follow. So there's definitely many other points that I would like to touch base on. And the last one we're going to talk about is toxins. So toxins are huge. Toxins they're the e-brake in your life. And sometimes they're not only the e-brake, they're the whole brake, and they're the wall in your life. Because toxins can lead you to really hitting the wall, which could be a cancer, it could be an autoimmune disease, it can even be a heart attack, stroke, etc. So what are some toxins that lead to fatigue? Let's talk about that. So for example, gluten. Gluten is a huge toxin. And this happens because the grains since history have been modified and modified and modified. Gluten was found in a lot of our very old grain, like spelt and barley and so forth. These are all gluten-containing grains. However, with the passing of time and industry, they've modified some of these grains and gluten, most namely. It's become a very large molecule. So this molecule has the ability to actually hurt your gut and lead to something called leaky gut. I don't know if you've heard of leaky gut and how familiar you are with leaky gut, but as you can see from the screen in the image, leaky gut is just basically the membrane of the gut barrier being destroyed. And when that happens, you cause extravasation or passage of whatever you're eating into the bloodstream. And here's a little secret for you guys to keep for yourselves. The body's only designed, the system, to consume, okay? The body's designed to only consume things that it knows what it is, molecules it knows what it is. Wait a minute. So you're saying my body doesn't know everything that's inside a Dorito, for example? Exactly, it doesn't know. You're saying my body knows exactly what a broccoli is and it can use mostly every substance, every molecule, every amino acid, mineral inside the broccoli? Exactly. But it doesn't know what the pesticides are on the broccoli. And that's why it can lead to issues. You see what I'm saying? Your body's designed to know how to snip all these proteins and break them down to amino acids and to take those amino acids and turn them into other proteins. It's designed to break down certain carbohydrates, the high quality ones, found in bananas, etc. But then when you start giving it all these chemicals and things it doesn't recognize, that's when it says, hey, immune system, get over here. Help me detoxify myself. And that's when your body starts to hurt itself. Okay. Now, what happens is when you have a scenario like leaky gut, for example, your body you start to eat these things and you continue to eat these things like gluten. Some of you have big issues with wheat and lactose and things like that actually start to hurt the gut barrier. So, well, lactose doesn't do much of that, but gluten does a lot of that. So, and then the gut barrier starts to open, and you don't want that. You start to have issues with some of these scaffolding proteins that we call occludin, zonulin, etc., which you guys can see from the diagram on the screen. And that is an issue because, like I said, you have foreign particles in your bloodstream. And then you call your whole immune system, you start calling antigen presenter cells, you start calling those T cells, and ultimately you call this cell called the natural, the killer cells. Huge problem. You don't want these cells, your own cells, attacking itself. Wait, so hold on. If I have my cells attacking me, do we know another name for that? Do we know actually a name that explains that a little bit better or that signifies that? Yeah, it's called autoimmune. So your body starts attacking itself. So now you made your immune system go rogue on you. So what happens after that? Well, then after that, if you don't stop that process, ultimately what's going to happen is your body's going to start attacking other things. It's going to start to cross-react. So it'll look, for example, at quinoa and think it's gluten. It'll look at an eggs that you're eating and think it's gluten. It'll look even at lactose, casein, and cross-react. And that's why you guys lots of times will go gluten-free, and it's like, wait, it's still not working. I still feel the process in my body, the bloating and the headache. Eat the gluten, the pasta on a Sunday night, Saturday night with your friends, have the headache Wednesday morning, or feel the fatigue Tuesday afternoon, right? So, and there's a lot connected to gluten, where I'm not going to spend too much time here on this today, but there's even studies connecting children that get lower SAT scores with their diet, and gluten definitely hampers their ability to score higher on SATs. So that's not something maybe you want to have in your household. And here's the thing, as far as I know, there's no nutritional value connected with the gluten. So it's something that you might want to reconsider and substitute in your diet. And even if you've been gluten-free, and I'm trying to give you guys free, easy tips, okay, just really to add value to your lives, to get rid of toxins first. Because I know sometimes people aren't in the place to, get into understanding the body and even doing work like we do, which we do really, really personalized, data-driven medicines, but we collect a lot of data on the body. And sometimes I can understand it can be cost prohibitive to many people. So my goal right now is to add value in your lives and just tell you, you don't need any money to do this part. You don't need any money to get rid of some of that fatigue, or even some of you guys, all of it, by eliminating toxins in your life. Go through what's in your environment. Go through your pots and pans. Pots and pans, what are you talking about, Dr. D? Yeah, for example, are you cooking on Teflon or are you cooking on ceramic? That's huge. What's the kind of cleaning products you're using? Are you using these soaps and detergents, etc., that can be hurting you and slowing you down? Or are you using soaps and detergents that are actually edifying your body, etc., and helping you? I'll give you an example. I'm a big fan of Castile soap, right? You guys can look it up. It's European. I think there's been even wars and a little bit of arguments over there in Europe because of this soap. It comes from Spain. So it's not a brand, it's a type of soap. Not advocating here for any kind of brand, but point is, what I'm trying to tell you guys is get rid of some of these toxins in your life. Change your diet. Have a little bit of a less inflammatory diet. One of our clients with our registered dietitian texted us the other day. He lost 14 pounds in 5 days. 14 pounds in 5 days without taking any products or anything. Just eliminated the gluten, the wheat, and the lactose. This is real. Eliminate that, and lots of times you guys will lose weight just because the inflammation starts to come down. Okay, so again, I hope I'm adding some value into your life. Just give it 30 days. Just give it 30 days removing these toxins and see what happens. Maybe your life will change. And then if you do have the possibility and and you consider it's a time in your life where you take a deep dive into your health, consider collecting data on your body. Consider looking at the cortisol axis, right? Salivary cortisol, where we use a lab called Senesco. We're a big fan of this lab, where we actually measure how much epinephrine, norepinephrine, GABA, dopamine, serotonin, PEA, all these neurotransmitters, how much are they, or how prevalent are they in your system? How prevalent is cortisol and the DHEA balance in your body? And then we really look at that cortisol curve. Are you the wired and tired, about to get a flat curve and burn out? Because I'll tell you, that happened to me, and I actually had to be put on bioidentical cortisol. Wait a minute, somebody put you on cortisone, Dr. D? No, I didn't say cortisone, I didn't say prednisone, I didn't say any of that stuff. I said bioidentical cortisol. My body was just not producing it, right? And lots of times we're trying to take, well, you know, some of you are experimenting with growth hormone, etc., and it feels like it's not working. Well, yeah, because if you have adrenal fatigue, the growth hormone and IGF-1 agents, etc., or some of you guys that like the peptide world, the CJC and hypomorelin and so forth, they just won't work if your adrenal gland is shot, right? So important you understand that. So whole point for today, I want you guys to understand that fatigue is not a friend of ours. It's no way that you want to live your life. It's a life of scarcity. It can be a sign, and usually is a sign of an impending doom, something not good about to happen, or your body trying to tell you, your body, what you wanted to send you an email, send you a text message. No, your body's going to give you signs. It's going to give you little rashes. It's going to give you stomach aches. It's going to give you headaches. It's going to make you tired to tell you, hey, I'm not happy, and make a change. So listen to your body. Listen to the orchestra. Listen to the music you're playing. Is it the song you want to hear? Because if it's not, it's time we take some action. And if you can today, just eliminate some toxins. Or if you want to take a step further, learn the process of actually understanding your body through a personalized, data-driven approach. Learn to, hey, do I have chemical agents in my body that are hurting me? Do I have parasites that are hurting me in my body, and which also can be causing fatigue? And I'm not going to make this too long today, but that's going to be a lecture for another time, in which we talk about pathogens. You know, mold that can be in your body. I'm in South Florida right now. I'm in downtown Miami, and here we find in a lot of our clients mold all the time. Stachybotrys carotarum, remember him from high school? Probably don't. Well, that's black mold, right? It's very common in these wet, humid areas. So, and they could really cause a lot of issues, and can also be affected with fatigue. But remember, if your cortisol's off, then it affects your thymus gland, then you start to feel tired, your T cells aren't working, and then it makes space for these things to come in, right? So I want you to understand today that it's important that you take a proactive approach in your life if you're feeling fatigue. Fatigue, you don't want it in your life. You want a life of energy and abundance. And where do we get energy? We get energy by eliminating these toxins, balancing our hormones, the cortisol, DHEA, etc., working on our mind, living in the front of our brain, not the back of our brain. When that line comes, which he will come, we stay in the front of our mind, right? And that's very, very important. And maybe today is the time, maybe now is the time where you're going to decide to take a proactive approach to living a life of energy, living a life of abundance, a life of connection with your higher self, and for those of you that even believe in this, a life that you connect with your creator, a life where you're living a life with purpose. You're not waking up in the morning to survive. You're waking up in the morning to thrive, to live the life that you designed in your mind. So take my words with love. I love y'all. Hope you learned something today. And then write to us, follow us, send us some comments, DM us, call us. We're here for you. We're here for you. And even, if you can't, for some reason in time, this isn't a good time for you to embark in a service like we offer, I really want you to understand that the purpose of this is to add value. And we have about 20 people on staff. We'll do our best to answer your questions and to guide you along the path. But here's one big thing. One big thing. Low-hanging fruit. Look at toxins in your life. Eliminate today the gluten, the wheat. Try to get off of that stuff, the lactose, etc. Okay? Love y'all. Dr. D. Don't wake up to just survive. Wake up to live the life you designed. Love y'all. Let's get it. Life of energy. Let's go.